Hello, welcome to Excel Communications video series on ZAC. In this video, we're going to go over binding, bound, or bind to. It's referred to in a lot of different terms, but binding just means that I'm binding a device to my ZAC software for it to ring. Simple terms. So we hope that this helps you with binding. It's a very useful tool if you're traveling, you have multi-site offices, or you just simply want to have some flexibility. So in ZAC, typically this bind to is not going to say bind to. At installation time, you would be assigned a device in programming, and by default, when you install and launch this application, it will automatically bind to that device, which means that when somebody calls your extension, your phone will work. So bind to is going to be a device that we want to ring when somebody calls your extension. So by default, the phone that's assigned to you in programming is always going to ring, and this would be a way to have something else ring. So bind recent would actually be any of the recent items that you bound to, whether it be an external number, a soft phone, a device ID, etc. Bind by device ID, you would actually have to know what the ID assigned in programming is to a device. Most people don't know that, don't care, and most likely don't understand it. So the system administrator would be able to give you that. If you happen to know how the device IDs were created, then you would be able to just enter that device ID. If the MX sees that device ID, then it will go ahead and register to it. So this isn't very simple unless you know how to get around in the phone and what it's looking for. Bind an external phone, basically what this means is this pretend is my cell phone. So if I bind to my cell phone and I hit the return key, you'll see now I'm bound to my cell phone down here. So if somebody dials my extension or calls my direct dial number, my desk phone, as I said, in programming that's assigned to me will always ring. So my desk phone would ring. It'll take a second for the call setup to ring this device, which is going to ring my cell phone, most likely a half a ring or a ring into my desk phone ringing. Then when my cell phone rings, I'll be presented with the caller ID for the person that's calling me from the outside. The good thing about doing it this way is if I have it on my cell phone, I ran out for lunch because I was waiting on an important call. When I come back in the office, in my call session window, I will actually see that call in place here, so I could park the call, do what I had to do with it, pick it up on my desk phone, and if I needed to, park it for somebody else to pick up, etc. So it's a good tool. Please never, ever bind to your direct dial number, or never bind to the company's main list number, or bind to a group direct dial number. If you belong in a group and there's a DID for that group, do not enter those numbers here. What you'll do is you'll put the system into a vicious loop because you're telling the system to call itself. It'll just chew up all the resources. You won't be able to make calls in or out until we figure out who did it. So please do not bind, again, to your DID, the company's DID, a group DID, any telephone number associated with dialing into Zultys' unified communication server. So to cancel that, we'll just cancel bind. It'll tell you need to be bound to something to make a phone call through ZAC. This is what we use for most easily binding a device that's a physical phone. So if I get up from my desk and I go into a co-worker's office to work, or in a conference room, anywhere where there's a phone on the system, I could launch ZAC on a TV, their computer, doesn't make a difference. But when I bind, I'm going to dial from their phone, bind by a call from the device. When you click that, the system's going to tell you what to dial. It gives you a minute to dial it. You dial it exactly as it says there. The *27 is the bind code, and then the next 3 digits says, hey, this is for me. So if I picked up a phone at my coworker's desk and dialed *27001, when somebody dialed my extension, my desk phone would ring as always, like I said earlier. If it's in programming and assigned to you, that phone will always ring. But now the desk where I'm sitting at would actually be ringing. So if I dial it from this phone, basically, I can't use it because I restricted my profile from not being shared. So anyways, that code would actually bind that phone to my extension. So when they dial my extension, my desk phone would ring, and while I'm sitting at that other desk, that desk phone would ring as well, and I'd see ZAC pop up for me if the call was for me. So binding by a call from a device is something that we use often. And then if you're working remotely, one of the things that you could do, one would be bind an external phone. And if you're one of those rare people that actually still have a home phone, you could put that home phone number in here while you're working at home. And when somebody dials your extension or your DID, your home phone would actually ring. And then, again, you'd see that call in your call session window. Or you could bind to a soft phone. So by binding to a soft phone, there's my volume key. It just tells me Bluetooth available. This actually allows this PC that I'm on to use this dial pad and use this as a phone. So it's recommended. A lot of new PCs have noise cancellation. They're actually pretty good. Older machines, even today, it's just recommended that you use some earbuds, whether you plug it into the laptop, just something where you can listen to the audio coming from the laptop or PC. And then when you speak through the mic, they're separated, because if you think about it, you're on a laptop, somebody is talking to you, you're just using a laptop. When that audio comes through the speakers, the mic may and can pick up that audio, and so what's it doing? It's going to broadcast their voice back to them and cause a reverberation effect, and they're going to be like, oh, this is awful. It's really not awful. It's just the way you got it set up. So if you're going to use a soft phone, it's recommended to have some at least earphones that you can listen to the caller, and then have a mic on it, obviously. If the PC doesn't see both of those, a way to listen and a mic to transmit audio, this bind won't be successful. It has to see those two before it would do it, and then there's some other settings that we can do. But basically, this is binding and how binding functions. Really appreciate some attention in this one, especially with not binding to the DID or any dialable number into the Unified Communications Server from Zultys. So thanks for watching. We'll continue with these short videos on how to use ZAC and its functions. Thanks.